Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. It's good to be here with you today and our good friend Terry Hershey. I'm looking forward to this show because we are planning to discuss the two most taboo subjects in the United States, religion and politics. Well, I'm not so sure we'll actually talk about religion and politics, but more about why we can't talk about them. What is the reason we can't talk about religion and politics? Terry Hershey is with me today, and Terry is quite passionate about both politics and religion. Yet he is fully aware of the deep-seated issues around both topics. As a public speaker, he faces the issue every time he stands up on a podium. When he speaks to a religious audience, he has to be careful to speak their religious language, whatever denomination or sect he is talking to, or risk being sacrificed on the altar of heresy. When he speaks to the public at large, he must be ever so cautious not to offend someone that does not agree with the politics he is so deeply passionate about. And he is passionate about both religion and politics. Now, what's going to make this podcast really interesting is Terry and I had a discussion on this subject yesterday and said, boy, that'd be a good topic for a podcast. Let's do it. And then Terry forgot that we were going to do a podcast, and I forgot what the subject was. And so he's been working in his garden all day, and your garden looks beautiful, right, Terry?
The garden's fantastic.
Yeah, I need to...
The garden is the balm you need from both religion and politics.
Oh, continue on with that just for a moment.
But one of the things, well, when we get to whatever jerks our chain, when our chain is jerked, that there's something about ourself that's not tethered. And so we're susceptible. But when we're grounded, I mean, think about just a simple thing. Think about times when you've snapped at somebody angrily, and you're not really angry at them. But there are other times they've done the same thing and you haven't snapped. What's the difference? The difference is there's times when you've slept well, you've eaten well, you've rested, you have no worry, and your behavior shows it. You don't. Let's use baseball language, which you will resonate with. You don't have to swing at every pitch.
Yeah.
If you do swing at every pitch, you're not right in the head. Is that true?
Correct.
Yes. So the garden helps me be right in the head.
Helps you look for that fastball down the middle.
Well, it helps me. It helps me breathe. It helps me relax. It helps me be centered. It helps me be comfortable in my own skin. And so, yeah, I can.
I like that. I like that phrase you use. It helps you be censored, and that's you're censoring yourself.
No, I said centered.
Oh, centered. I thought you said censored. Does it help you be censored?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't. Well, I don't need. There's certain things that I would say when I'm not my best self. When I'm tired, for example, when I've traveled to too many events in too short a period of time, and had too many trips, and haven't slept well, I'm going to react in a way that's probably not going to be helpful conversationally. And I'm going to say some things I probably will regret. That
makes sense. Yes, and because our filters, we have no filters up, no safeguards, and I think it's appropriate. It's appropriate censorship.
So yeah, safeguard is a good word. Boundary is a good word there about just what kind of boundaries we have. Anyway, so yeah, the garden. My first question is tell me where you're grounded, and because we live in a world that is so the speed is Mach 12, and information is like from a fire can, a water can, and we're bombarded all the time, and it's no wonder we're not at home in our skin. So basically, we're swatting, and I can see why everybody's so pissed.
You know, grounded is a good word, because I know many people, and this is observing, so I certainly don't know the core of their soul, but they seem to be grounded in either their politics or their religion. Those seem to be, maybe not the totality of their grounding, but a large portion of who they consider as how they consider themselves and how they consider social responsibility and social insight, how that impacts them personally. And so the grounding in religion and politics is a very strong measure, don't you think?
Yeah, at one level. I mean, I'm underneath both of those, in the sense of just there's an emotional, spiritual well-being that comes from being, and I'm going back to the word centered, to be centered. I'm not blown off course easily when I'm centered. I don't snap. I don't bite.
I hear that word a lot, centered. What do you mean by that?
Well, think of a ship. Think of a boat. I mean, when you're centered, you can sail and you can cruise. I mean, when you're not centered, there's storms and you're going from side to side and you're not balanced at all, and you're thrown off balance. And
you have nothing to balance you.
And you have nothing to balance you. And so basically you're grabbing and shouting and that's what not centered is.
Well, wouldn't religious people say that they are centered in their particular belief system?
Yeah, but my argument would be that their belief system doesn't center them. It's being okay with that belief system. Because for starters, with religion, there's a belief system. So you start with a creed or I believe in, I believe this, I believe that. Just start with the basic. I believe in God. Okay, what kind? I believe in this God. Okay, I don't. Okay, those are belief systems. But as you know very well, I was raised in a church where I wasn't centered in that belief, even though I believed it, because it was predicated on some sort of, what if I screwed up?
Yeah, it's predicated on judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always worried. I'm always looking over my shoulder, so I wasn't really centered in that. However, yeah, just technically, yes, that's true. You can be centered in that. But the centering is that your faith in your religious belief system makes you a better person. It brings out the best of who you are. That's when you're centered, and you're comfortable there. And yes, so that.
Yeah, how frequently, since we'll get onto the politics side of it in a bit, but how frequently on the religious side are people centered to the point that it gives them freedom and power to be at peace and at comfort and non-judgmental and non-adversarial against everybody else, but that I'm comfortable in what I believe and what I consider to be a truth, to the degree that I can call something a truth, but I have I feel no impulse or responsibility to make somebody else think or feel the same way I do about this particular religion.
Yes, and I like adversarial. That's a good word, or the need to convert.
Right.
But to feel, because belief is not just to be able to assent to. It's not a cerebral thing. It's not a cognitive thing. That's what we've done in the Western world is we've made belief a cognitive thing, that you have to understand it or comprehend it and therefore say it. And the irony of that is, think about it this way, Charlie. If here's how you know the difference. If you, and I know you well enough to know what some of your cognitive beliefs are, and you live into some of them well, and some of them you're not sure about because you don't know quite how to attach them to your daily life. Same with me, same with all of us. However, I know the ones, if you're comfortable in your own skin, and you're talking with me, and I'm talking about a God that's different from the God you believe in if you're comfortable in your own skin, you just say, "Oh, that's interesting."
Exactly. Yeah. Tell me more.
In other words, it doesn't trouble your belief. Is my point. It doesn't rock your boat. You're still content and comfortable and grounded in the fact that the God you believe in makes you safe, so you're good. And who knows? You might learn.
Exactly. So what is it about religion that generally or often elicits quite the opposite behavior in ire and anger and before you know it, people are yelling and screaming and calling and name calling?
Because one of the primary things that God is taught on and predicated on, and many religious teachings are predicated on, is who you are is not okay. And so essentially you are looking over your shoulder and you are living with anxiety and you're busting your butt to be okay.
So how does fear come into that?
That's the point, is you're afraid. I'm afraid I'm not enough. I'm afraid I'm going to be wrong. I'm afraid that yours is different, and therefore what? I'm afraid that I don't have the capacity to be worthy of whatever it is I've been given. All those things were given to me, taught to me. Every single one of them.
Yeah, I just read a book, Terry, that's by a pretty famous and highly regarded Christian author who promoted some of the beliefs that are prominent in Eastern Christianity, and he's promoting them to a Western audience. And I have no doubt that he's going to be deemed a heretic.
Yeah, he's already been. He already has been.
Has he? I tried to look it up and I didn't see it.
Well, yeah. The Vatican hasn't, but there are certain bishops who won't allow any Catholic churches in their diocese to invite him in.
Oh, really? In Catholicism? And can you imagine what it's like in Protestantism? It's what he's
Catholic.
But we know what he's teaching, and but he's teaching, and he has a lot of Protestants that come to his. He has a retreat center and all. And he has he may have as many Protestants as he does Catholics that go to his seminars and his teachings.
And I would say, to your point though, is that Richard Roy we're talking about, he offers it's an invitation. Invitation is a powerful thing that your faith grounds you. And so there are many, many people who have been kicked out of or buffeted or had experiences with their religious faith that's unnerved them. And many people who are not necessarily even religious, who are come alive listening to that, because it is about being centered and grounded.
Yeah, and anybody that challenges, Richard is challenging not just some tangential beliefs in Western theology. He's challenging, perhaps the single most core issue out there, and so it's just, I'm interested to see what's going to be the result of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. The church. I mean, I just finished a book by Teilhard de Chardin, who's a French.
Yeah, and he quotes Teilhard quite a bit.
Yeah, Teilhard was a priest, but he was also a scientist, paleontologist, and And Teilhard, so he married the two worlds.
He did,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, his amazement.
Well, what did he find in China? I can't. I read his biography, and I can't. He found it was like the missing link that they shipped him because the Catholics didn't like what he was saying, so they thought they'd ship him off to China, and they shipped him off to an archaeological dig where he found. It was some kind of man. I can't recall the name of the man, but it was like the missing link. And it was just so ironic that they shipped him off to get rid of him, and they put him right in the middle of it. And
I don't know. I didn't know that part of the story.
Oh yeah, it's really strong. You know, it's said of Teilhard de Chardin that he had two photographs or two pictures, not photographs. They would be two paintings of in his room. And that was all that was on the wall. One was John the Baptist. The other was Charles Darwin.
That's good.
So he really, they were always trying to ship him off somewhere else because, he had his firm beliefs in which, he's now considered by many, one of the most, highly regarded contemplatives out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So as we were talking, I think yesterday, the word fear really came up, and in the religious realm, I can understand that because that's a core belief, and that's a belief of current life, afterlife. It has a moral code all around it, and there's this unfortunately, so much of religion is based around exclusivity that
it is essentially tribal.
Yeah, or even worse, because it's if you don't believe as we believe, and this heaven and hell issue is such a big issue. Are you going to heaven or are you going to hell?
I know, and think about it. It's not even. We don't even get to that point of let's say you're having dinner and you're with a group of people and someone says, I feel bad about so-and-so because they're not a Christian, they're going to hell. And then someone just says, oh, that's interesting because I don't believe in hell. Now, that might lead to an interesting conversation, or it might just stop the conversation dead in its tracks, right?
Yeah, more likely the latter. And I don't think it's going to stop the conversation right in its tracks. It's just going to take it a whole different direction. And that's why we say you can't talk about religion and politics, because it's just going to...
So I'm on an interesting note, just because I try to... We had a conversation about this because I returned this last weekend. I travel and speak. And I was doing an event in Virginia with a group of men for a men's retreat, and they asked me to do the topic of Christianity and politics.
which I found really interesting.
I know. And so, yeah.
Especially your politics with Christians.
I said, so let's just do it the way we do it at Thanksgiving. Let's just sit silently for the 3 days.
Let's just eat.
Yeah, let's just eat. So I talk. It's interesting because I'm a Michigan boy. That's where I was born and raised, right?
Right.
And
Colon, Michigan.
I didn't go to U of M. I would have if it had theology, but I didn't. I would have. My brother went to Michigan State. But the point is this: I lived this out a little bit. A year ago, I was doing an event in Columbus, Ohio, and my friend has season tickets to the Buckeyes. And so we went to the shoe for a football. Well, Michigan people and Ohio State people, it's not a dislike, it's a hate.
Yes.
I mean, literally, it's a hatred.
Yeah, it's one of the strongest rivalries in college sports.
Yeah, and so pick a rivalry, and this is the interesting thing, is that the first knee-jerk is about anything about them is going to be negative. In other words, it's automatic. And so there's something in the human spirit that's curious. I mean, this is what you're getting at with religion. What is it that makes us that tribal? What are we afraid of? What's going on there?
And that's the bottom line question, I think, don't you, Terry? What are we afraid of?
I think it is the bottom line question.
Yeah, and it's like take that. When you look at the importance on the scale of life, the rivalry between Ohio State and U of M is meaningless. You know, there is no point to it, and yet, you know, there can be fights in the parking lot, and
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And what are they afraid of, Terry?
Okay, to answer that, but I just pulled something out. I got to circle back here.
Okay.
So these guys I gathered with.
Oh yeah, I want to get on that. Okay, let's go back to that.
But I started with this with them. That Jesus took his disciples up to the mountain, and gathering them, he taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek." And I did the whole thing.
Right.
And then Simon Peter said, "Do we have to write this down?"
Is this going to be on the test?
Yeah. In other words, is this going to separate us from them? Yeah. What are we afraid of?
Why does there need to be an us and them? Because we live so much, and you know, and I hate to admit it, but there is an us and them part of me, you know, that I...
Oh, of every single one of us, Charlie. Of every single one of us. It's ingrained.
And it just...
something about who we are will be taken away.
Okay, now we're getting at it. Something about...
Because you use the word safe or safe or safety. In other words, that I can be there and, okay, I'm... the tethered part. I'm tethered here, and it's not about being grounded per se. The safety part is that nothing will come at me that will derail me. So let me tell you a story, and then we'll keep talking about this. So in the 1950s, there was a tiger in the Washington D.C. Zoo, the National Zoo. His name was Mohini. He was, what do you call, they're white, they don't have color, but...
Albino?
Albino Siberian tiger, so unbelievably rare, majestic creature. And he lived there, and it was the old days when the zoos were just cages, remember?
Right.
You used to walk by.
Yeah.
And what did the tigers do and the lions do in those cages? They just paced.
Circle, yeah. Pace, circle.
Yeah, he walked, and his was a 12 by 12, and he did a little 12 by 12. That's what he did all day. So the National Zoo changed, and so then they put them in, they made a new zoo like we have now, just like San Diego Zoo. In other words, they have vast bits of land that the animals live in that are going to be more, what would imagine as freeing, correct? Liberating, right? In other words,
I'm afraid I know where this is going, and I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that? So Mohini, it's an unbelievable story. He has a new half acre of the kind of land that tigers would love, from wherever tigers come from. Anyway, the first day, Mohini walked the entire half acre to check it out. And he found a place in the back corner that was 12 by 12, and he walked that for the rest of his life.
So that's fascinating. So, the takeaway from that is what would you say?
There's something comforting about a thing that we believe we can control.
There, I think you're getting onto something that we can control, and
we believe we can control.
We believe we can control, and something that also there's a portion of it that is protective, isn't it? That by believing this, I am protected against them.
Well, for starters, if I just walk my 12 by 12, I'm protected against uncertainty of having to explore the rest of that acre.
Right.
I'm protected against the discombobulation of new things that are happening to me in the day. In other words, I equate what I believe is certainty. I equate that with who I am. And so anything that questions that's where fear comes in.
I think that's a very important point, is that our beliefs are not just beliefs, but they are markers of our identity. And when you question that belief system, then you're now questioning my identity, who I am as a person. And therein lies the fear that if that gets questioned, then I no longer have any place to stand. I'm sort of, standing with my feet in midair.
Yeah, because it's a fascinating thing that for whatever reason we've decided to wed our identity to that, to these cognitive cerebral sort of attachments. And when they're taken away, or even in Mohini's case, it wasn't taken away, it was changed. But he reverted.
Because he found safety in that 12 by 12.
Correct.
Let's. I want to continue on, and I want to move from we've been focusing largely on religion, and I want to focus on the thing that's causing all the trouble in the United States right now, and that's politics, and why we can't talk about politics. So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll tackle that one. Hi, this is Charlie Hedges, and you're listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie, and I'm speaking with my good friend Terry Hershey on a topic that he and I talked about on the phone yesterday and said, gee, this would make a good podcast. And we're talking about what's at stake when you talk about religion or politics. And we're not necessarily taking any kind of position on religion and politics because oddly enough, as close as we are, we have similar yet dissimilar beliefs in both of those, yet we're able to discuss them. And we've been talking about religion and talking about, other things that form our identity. And there's a fear that if my belief is challenged, then my identity is challenged, and if my identity is challenged, I sort of become less than. Would you say, Terry? I become. Once
you start to say, who am I? I mean, your sense of value. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and why wouldn't it be better to say my sense of value is curiosity, and I'm curious why people believe what they believe, and if it challenges my belief, this is the way I work. If it challenges my belief, But at the end of my research and evaluation and contemplation, I find that their position makes more sense. I guess I've been given the grace to be able to adopt another position and say, if it makes more sense, then I that's why I'd like to say, don't believe what I say today, because I could change my mind tomorrow if somebody were to give me good evidence. But why is it we live right now in a world, we live in probably the most political world, would you say the United States has ever faced? I don't know. It's faced in my lifetime. I can't say ever. But the most political world it's faced in my lifetime. And it is so disheartening, and it's so separating that the difference between, you can't even say Republicans, because he's not really a Republican. It's Trump v. the Democrats.
That would be that. No, that's accurate.
Yeah. But it causes vitriol. I mean, you look at the Congress people that go on air, and senators that go on air, and the news and the news reporting, whether you listen to Fox or MSN or CNN, you get there's nothing but anger that you get there, and condemnation. What brings that all about? Why is politics? Why I can understand how religion can bring up such ire, but why does politics do it? Why do we identify so much with a political system?
Well, it's interesting, Charlie. I wish we had more time to talk about this, but we've run out of time. It's been very good to be with you today. You know what's fascinating is that I actually equate the two. I mean, the way people react in a tribal environment, politics-wise, is no different than the way I was raised in a religion where the other people, were going to hell, and we talked about them quite frankly and openly about them going to hell.
Was there any sort of sense of pride in that I'm in and you're out?
It's not pride. It's very Mohini-like. I've got my 12 by 12.
Yeah. Okay.
And you don't.
Okay.
And there's something about that, because you're looking over your shoulder just to get somebody to wink at you and say you did good, and because you're not comfortable enough in your own skin to say this is who I am and this is what I believe, because you don't believe you're okay. And the thing about politics, so I started the guys with this, that politics, we've got to change words, please. Politics, when politics, just the word itself just simply means learning to live together, living together.
Yeah, you brought that point up to me yesterday, and I was quite fascinated with that.
Well, I mean, politics is just living together. For example, we all pull in, there's several of us with cars, we pull into a parking lot, there's only X number of spaces, there's X number of cars. That's politics. It's living together.
It's a social system.
Now, yes, in other words, it's a way that socially you navigate the things you do so that there's this many people on the planet to do this. That's politics. Now, the irony is, here's the irony I told you. We would get out of the car and we would figure that out politically in a way that probably, it may piss somebody off, but probably wouldn't. We'd probably do okay. So then the question is, how is it that in certain areas of quote, because I switched it from politics, which is living together, which all of us believe in. All of us do. We have to policy or governance. Now that is your question. Why is it that in our history that your choices about governance makes enemies of other people? That's relatively new. That the way you choose to govern, or the way you choose, using my illustration, to organize the parking lot is different. And I say to you, it's not just about polity. See, it's not just about governance, because the discussion about how we organize the parking lot, we're going to disagree on. Republicans are going to say, and I'll use this illustration, Republicans are going to say, okay, if we're going to park the cars, let's not have a big government organization to tell who parks the cars. You know?
Right.
And the Democrats are going to say we're going to have a committee of 5 people to park the car.
Yeah, we got to have parking lot attendants.
Yeah, exactly. So my point is, we get that. But this is different now because it's not just about, but we can have that. We can hash that out. You can say to me, let's have one parking lot attendant, and it's only this hours, and we'll say, okay, boom, done. However, but now, I sit down at Thanksgiving, and you can't say anything. Why? What's going on? Because now it's infested, not just the governance or policies, because we're not talking about governance or policy at these discussions. It's simply about civil discourse. It's about the way we berate one another.
And it's very in our, especially in today's system, is very personality driven as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just wish. I mean, this is just me speaking personally. I mean, the people that I know, my father who lives in Michigan, voted for Donald Trump, and because my father and I can have conversations about this. So tell me about this, Dad. And he'll say the one reason is he didn't like the other candidate. Okay, fine, fair enough. But why do you like this candidate? And then I'll ask him, are you comfortable with the discourse in the United States today? And a part of him kind of doesn't quite know what to say. But the other part says, but he's a fighter. Now, this is fascinating to me. And that's why, going back to the boys in this meeting I had, if it means living together, can we agree on that we have to live together? Everyone in the room said yes. No one worried about whether we voted one way or the other. We're going to have to live together, yes. Okay. So, if we're going to live together, choices about living together are predicated on values. Fair enough? Yes. What are those values? And we made a list. We spent 2-3 hours working on values.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah. Because, and then I said, and then we had an interesting discussion because these values had to do with empathy and listening and compassion. I mean, these are powerful values. And connection, community.
Was there concurrence between two different sides, or were they all one side of the political spectrum, or were both sides represented?
That's the point I was making, is that the values, there was concurrence on the values before we even named the sides.
Oh. So, and these people didn't know each other, so nobody really knew, or they didn't know everybody in the room, so they never really knew where somebody stood. What's that?
Yes, they didn't know everybody in the room. But the point is, they had agreed on a set of values before they even knew what, quote, side they, quote, and this is interesting the way you say that, side.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because you're not on the side. What? I can't be on the side of the United States.
Yeah. No, you can't. There's no such thing as that side. I'm sorry, that side is not allowed.
And yet, I have a room full of people who agreed on a set of values.
And so then, what did you do? I'm curious. What did you then go through policy and see how it measured up to values, or did you take that chance even?
Well, I said that's something you have to do from whatever side you're on. You have to ask how the policy plays out with that value. But I'm wondering, I said, with regard to our dialogue with each other, how is it that we agree to this list of values, and yet there's going to be a screaming match at Thanksgiving? How is that a possibility? That means something else at play.
Exactly. And is that something else? Identity and fear of losing my identity? Is that the something else? Or one of them at least?
Well, I said we have to be honest, my friends. We have to be honest that for whatever reason, we have tied our identity to something other than our values.
Oh my goodness, Terry, boy, you really hit on something there, because that's extremely important. Once we begin to tie our identity to something other than our values and our core driving values, then it's just superficial garbage.
Well,
that happens to impact the lives of millions of people.
I'm certainly at the mercy of every curveball that sets me up to swing and miss.
Yeah.
Because it was fascinating. We're at the room. These guys agreed on their values, and yes, and you know how you go around the room. Yes. Now, granted, if we going back to my parking lot issue. The value of, let's say, and fairness was one of their values. They all agreed on that. Okay, so there's going to be fairness in the parking lot. Now, we may come at it differently. But you know what? At the parking lot level, we could have figured out. And yet, now when we have a, quote, political discussion and somebody's name comes up, there's all of a sudden, there's vitriol, as you said, vitriol. What the hell's going on? We agreed on the value.
Do you think it would help if we really attempted to understand the position of the opposite side? If we really took the time to look at it honestly?
No, actually, there's stuff to do before that.
What's that?
I don't really, because part of me doesn't really care about your position, because I gave them a checklist. I said for conversations, I gave them, you know how the FAA gives pilots, they have a checklist that they have to go through before they fly the plane, right? I said you have to do the same thing before you're going to have a conversation. And I gave them a checklist. And one of them, there's a whole bunch of stuff on it. But I said one of them is, the issue is never the issue. The issue is never the issue. In other words, when people are fighting, that's never the issue. Think about marriage. The thing you fight about is never the issue.
Right, there's something else going on. So what do you do with that?
Something else underneath.
So what do you do with that?
So the first thing is, I realize that if I see the issue as the issue, then I'm going to bite every time that somebody's saying something to me. But if I realize underneath it is something going on in this person, that there's a person underneath the issue. So you're asking, should I understand their side? Yeah, a part of me will, but first I understand them. What's got them riled? What's got them concerned? What really are they concerned about? I mean, I've had conversations with people. Let's take an issue that the border, for example. I've had conversations with people, and we can have a fight about whether to have a wall or not a wall. But the point is, when I'm having a conversation, I want to know what's going on in your life personally that triggers things for you, or that makes you ask these questions, and what kind of questions can I ask you to figure you out? Not what you believe about the position or the policy or the governance.
So I can empathize with how you feel about this.
Precisely, 100%. So I can see you as a person. 100%, yes. In other words, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's boy, and that requires just a boatload of effort. But
see, now you've touched on the reality about getting past this, that we can't resolve this cognitively. We can resolve it with presence and boatload
of empathy.
And the fact is that there are reasons that you, and I say in pain, because when people are shouting, they're in pain. I don't care what they're shouting about. If they're shouting, they're in pain. There's some kind of pain, discomfort. So there's a reason to cause pain. So medical doctors go through a thing. Let's figure out where the pain's coming from. We've got to figure this out.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure we've resolved anything, but we have certainly explored the issue of what's going on.
Charlie, I would say the first thing I told the guys is that, as much as I want to, because a lot of them wanted to understand either children they had or in-laws or daughters-in-laws or sons-in-laws or all this stuff. They wanted to figure them out. And I say the first thing is just, the first takeaway is, how do you not be Mohini doing your 12 by 12?
Right.
In other words, start there. Start what you bring into it with your pain. Where's the pain with that? Where's it? What? And where are you grounded? Tell me where you're grounded.
Yeah, I think that's really critical. The grounded, the centered, as you've explained it, the values. I think once we understand our own, that gives us a reference point to try to understand somebody else's.
100%.
But it really begins. So the issue really begins with a self-evaluation of me. Why am I so indoctrinated in this particular religious or political belief? And why am I so indoctrinated to the point that I can come to anger and fighting at the Thanksgiving table over such things?
Yeah, it takes a big person to be self-aware enough to say, you know what, here's what I'm learning about me. Here's my triggers. Here's what the triggers are. And to be able to say, for example, if I have a difference with, it's not just about governance, but I have a difference with the civil dialogue or tone, I need to be able to have that discussion without shouting someone down or condemning them.
To have that discussion, and to not be offended, because the civil discourse does not mean dispassionate discourse. There can be passionate without.
In fact, Charlie, if people sometimes, we should put a microphone in some of our conversations as you and I have. They're very passionate.
Yeah, and
on times that we're not on the same page, and they're great conversations. They're the best.
Yeah, and there's no offense taken.
No, because you and I have looked at the values, and we've agreed to the values, and they trump, pardon my French.
I don't think you would call it French. I think you'd call it something else.
Any disagreement we might have.
Yeah, and they are exactly. That's what I was thinking. Is that for our listeners is not to confuse civil discourse with dispassionate discourse, but that it doesn't have to be name calling and accusatory, that there's something really, you're doing something really evil.
Although I'm going to post, I agree with you. I'm going to post a thing for a translation for Southern speak, that when someone says, bless his heart.
Yeah, bless his little heart.
That means
yeah, bless his little heart. Yeah, what is it? It certainly does not mean those words.
No. Bless his little heart.
Yeah, bless his little heart. Now go slap the shit out of him. I think that's a good place to close.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for entering into this whirlpool of a mess that we find ourselves in, and I like some of your conclusion, especially your conclusions, especially the values oriented and the willingness to have discourse. If only we could do that without trying to raise the ire of the other. See, that's a whole other subject that I don't want to get into, because there's so much of that goes on that people actually attempt to raise the ire of the other. And it's all crazy.
Charlie, I've been married before. I know that. I understand that.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. Take care. It's thanks for coming on and doing this with me. This is and especially, this totally unscripted dialogue that we had here, and
it would be like a conversation that you and I would have. Well, I'd be having the beer, but it'd be you and I having the conversation.
Yeah, and me with my my sparkling water. Yeah, although I'm moving to ginger beer.
Oh, good choice. Well done, you.
Yeah. So, look, I want to encourage everybody to check out your post Sabbath moment. I received a comment on my Sabbath moments on my blog about somebody that reads your Sabbath moment, and I talked to my priest yesterday as we were going over Richard Rohr's theology, and he was mentioning the story you told of bridge building as opposed to fence building. And he was very moved by that. And so I just want to encourage our listeners to check into your Sabbath moment, which comes out every Monday and can be found at terryhershey.com. And I want to also thank all our listeners for tuning in to The Next Chapter with Charlie. And be sure to check us out at our website, thenextchapter.life. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.